Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from FantasyFootballScout.co.uk. My name is David and today we're going to have a look at the Scout Picks Bus Team, which is of course the 11 players selected by the editorial team as the best 11 players to have for the coming game week. Now of course this does come with a few caveats. It doesn't track from one week to the next. It's simply a case of every week these guys get a bit of a free hit, jammy I know, to pick the best 11 players and of course substitutes as well, all on a budget of 100 million. And yeah, we have a look at that to see whether or not really your team is well equipped for Game Week 11. It's never normally a case of make sure you own all of these players. It's just these are the best players for the game week. Measure your team against it. How many of them do you have? And that gives you an idea of just how well equipped you are for the game week coming up. So we're going to go through some of the players that are in contention to be in it. At the moment, it's just a bus team. You have to wait until Friday to get the final team and, of course, the captain as well. So do keep an eye on fantasyfootballscout.co.uk, either on the website or any of the social media channels where you follow the team, and you'll find out what the final selection is then. But for now, what we can do is we can go through all of the players that are in contention, have a look at what the bus team is for now, and talk about some of the reasons why. Now, before we get started, a few pieces of housekeeping as ever. If you've not already signed up to Fantasy Football Scout membership, then now is a good time to do that. Of course, we've got another game week around the corner. You can save up to 20% on the prices. You can get access to all sorts of amazing stuff in terms of tools, tables, and all of the great stuff that's in the members area. And of course, you'll get full access to who the captain is of this team on Fridays when the team is announced on the website. So it's also quite useful if you've got some last minute decisions that need to be made. And we've also got a word from our sponsor as well. If you weren't already aware, you can now back up FPL selections by betting on this week's most notable players at smartkits.com. Smartkits now allows you to bet on whether you think a player will get more or less than a certain number of points. For example, this week, if you think Marcus Rashford will get more or less than 6.5 points, then you can bet on that. There are also head-to-head markets where you can bet on who you think will get the most points this week as well. We know not everybody gambles. Something we take very seriously. That's why on our website we have a filter that you can turn on which allows you to opt out the gambling ads. For those of you who do so, enjoy it responsibly and safely. There's more info about markets in the description. You obviously have to be 18 or over to play, and we encourage everybody to gamble responsibly and to be gambleaware.org. When the fun stops, stop. But of course, somewhere where the fun never stops is when we are, of course, selecting FPL teams. And as I said, the editorial team have posted the Scout Picks Bus Team for Game Week 11, which can give us an idea of who we think are the best players to have, could perhaps guide your transfers or give you an idea of how well equipped your squad is for Game Week 11. So we'll start off by having a look at the fixtures in isolation. Which teams have the best fixtures? Which ones have the worst? And we are finding ourselves in a really nice place. There was a time when a triple up on Man City and a triple up on Liverpool was kind of the bedrock of most people's teams, and it's been some time since we've been able to have something quite like that. But it's back. It's back this week with Liverpool and Man City atop the season ticker for Game Week 11. Liverpool, of course, go to Kenilworth Road to face Luton. Manchester City host Bournemouth. Now, we've got Sheffield United and Wolves also in the top 6 for best fixtures this week because they are, of course, facing each other. Crystal Palace are away at Burnley and Brentford host West Ham. So they're the 6 most favourable fixtures. Who's got the harder time of it then? Well, we've got Bournemouth going away to Man City, so they're all the way at the bottom. We've got Luton, obviously, hosting Liverpool, so they're the 4th worst, apparently. West Ham and Chelsea also have difficult times against Brentford and Spurs respectively. But the important thing here is that we've got Arsenal and Newcastle playing each other. Now, Arsenal players and Newcastle players have been heavily involved in the Scout Picks so far this season. You may own a few of their players yourself, but with them playing each other, it does make life difficult for us to talk about them with too much excitement. So I suppose if you've only got 1 or 2 players across these two teams, you're probably okay. If you've got 4 or 5 players across these two teams, then it's possible that you might need to come up with some kind of action plan to mitigate against that, because I don't think we're going to be seeing too many Arsenal and Newcastle players talked about in this one. Now, as ever, we break this down into a couple of sections. We've got the guys who are most likely to be involved. We've got those who are in contention and a couple of long shots as well. So we'll start off with the likeliest of the lads. And this one I've kind of already alluded to, really. Man City and Liverpool, they've got the easiest fixtures on paper. So it makes sense for us to be heavily involved there. A couple of reasons why those fixtures are easy. Well, Bournemouth and Luton, they've got 1 clean sheet between them so far this season after 10 games apiece. They've conceded a combined 41 goals in that time as well. They're ranked 19th and 18th respectively for expected goals conceded so far this season. And if you go just on the last 4 matches, they're actually 20th and 19th respectively as well. So they've been pretty poor defensively across the course of the campaign, and that is still the case of late as well. They're also not doing very well in front of goal either. They're both scoring at a rate of less than 1 goal per match. And so that means that a triple up for both teams is entirely probable, because we've got lots of attacking threat and we've also got potential defensive potential as well. Now, the reason why a triple up is quite important is because lots of you have Haaland, lots of you have Salah, and so having both of those might not actually take you as far as you'd like this week, versus some teams that perhaps have an Alvarez or a Nunez on top. But let's talk about those two guys. They very much are the story of this game week. Of course, the captain's armband is going to be probably between one of those two. And so, yeah, knowing the difference between these two players is going to be important. So let's have a look at what the editorial team have got to say in terms of them being in the Scout Picks Bus team. Well, the interesting thing here is that even though Haaland has not necessarily been at his best in the 3 weeks before the most recent one, of course, big haul against Man United, they are still the leading two players for expected goal involvement so far this season, and they are now reunited in the top 2 places amongst the FPL points table following the Sunday hauls as well. So it means that we are now back to a place where they are the 2 top scoring assets so far this season, and so it's a bit of a no-brainer. You've got to have probably both of these guys to make sure that you get through this week unscathed. Now, what players could we pair with these guys to expand our influence on these games? Well, Trent Alexander-Arnold is sort of in the conversation, but unfortunately for him, the gap between him and Tsimikas is so big that Tsimikas is much more likely to be involved. 7.9 for Trent, 4.5 for Tsimikas. The thing is, both players are taking corners now, and interestingly enough, Alexander-Arnold, he's created just 2 chances since returning from injury in Game Week 7. Tsimikas has created the same number as that in a relatively short space of time since taking over the left-back position from the injured Andrew Robertson. Now, in the days when you had Alexander-Arnold and Robertson much closer in price, then sometimes it's worth paying that extra for Alexander-Arnold, but right now Tsimikas just looks an absolute shoo-in. We've already talked about the fact that Luton's defence is not very good, Luton's attack is not very good so far this season. Tsimikas obviously coming into this one on the back of a clean sheet for Liverpool against Nottingham Forest. So, yeah, he seems like an easy one to get involved. And we are now in a place where it does look as if Darwin Nunez is also a bit of a... I was about to say auto-include. I don't want to say that because he isn't going to be in my team. But if you've got a striker opening, and in the past you've been worried about Nunez's minutes, I don't think you have to be worried about that either. In the past, if you have been worried about his XG delivery, in the sense that he's always had high XG but sometimes doesn't deliver on it, he is starting to look in really good shape now, to be honest. So he is... He's very obviously the most likely attacking player to join Salah in an attacking double-up. Nunez is now Liverpool's top asset for minutes per expected goal in 2023-24. Salah has a higher raw figure because he's played more minutes. It's taken Nunez a little bit of time to get nailed in the team, but he is now. Klopp in the past has been a bit nervous to use him, but he's seemingly not fussed by that anymore. He just looks like a great asset, to be honest, in good form. He's probably going to start games. It seems very difficult to overlook him for this one if you've got an opening for him. Now, the triple up for Man City, a little bit harder to be sure about who's going to be in it, but a couple of players who are included in this section, Alvarez, Foden and Doku, could all potentially be involved. The risk does come with some possible rotation because, of course, there's midweek stuff coming up for them next week. Akanji is back as well. John Stones has been really, really good since he's come back from injury, which is nice as well. So we are kind of creeping back towards a place where we might be a bit nervous about who's going to start games. So it's harder to be completely sure about who else is going to join Haaland in the Scout Picks team from a Man City double up or triple up perspective. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on that. Let's move on to those in contention now. We have to start with Brian Mbeumo, of course. He is now the leading FPL midfielder for non-penalty XGI. Now we have to admit that open goals, of course, help there. If you want more information on sort of like some perhaps strategy around Mbeumo, I talked about him in my most recent team reveal video yesterday because, of course, famously I sold him for game week 10, and then of course that Chelsea game has gone exactly the way I did not want it to, allowing him to have a shot on an open goal in the last few minutes. But of course, it hasn't just been that all season. He has been doing very well. Back-to-back double-figure hauls for him. They were his first 2 double-figure hauls since I think it was game week 2. So he's creeping back to his best. Brentford sort of just about finding a way to play without having lost Rico Henry. They're sort of finding a way to play now, and his attacking numbers dipped, Mbeumo's, and they've gone back up in the last 2 games. To do that against Burnley, probably not much to write home about, but to do it against Chelsea, whose defence has been quite mean this year, is quite impressive. Of course, going into this West Ham game, this actually is a really, really favourable fixture. They've only got one clean sheet so far this season, the Hammers, and it came against Sheffield United, which is not much to write home about either, to be honest, because I think everybody is going to be in a strong position to get clean sheets against the Blades this season. West Ham are also going to be missing two midfielders for this game, two important ones as well, Edson Alvarez and Lucas Paqueta, both suspended for this one. So two guys that are part of the midfield injury room going to be missing when West Ham have been very obliging at the back anyway. And Mbeumo is slowly getting back to, the form we saw from him at the start of the season. So, yeah, I think Mbeumo is a good one to have this week. I wouldn't necessarily rush to sign him for my team. As I said, the thing about the bus team and the scout picks is you don't necessarily need to buy all of them, but it's if you've sort of like got an opening and you don't have anything else to do, there are worse players to sign for this one. And the reason why I say I wouldn't necessarily rush to sign him is the two fixtures after this aren't very nice. But if you had him in your team, and even though he's done well of late, and you thought of looking at some of the assets in other teams with better fixtures longer term, you can probably give Mbeumo one more game week. I think he's going to do very well against West Ham this week, and I'm very nervous that I'm going to continue to look like a mug for having sold him last week. Now, who else is in contention? Well, we've got Crystal Palace and Wolves. They are going up against newly promoted teams this week, so they've obviously got nice fixtures. So we kind of expect that these two teams might not necessarily completely destroy Burnley and Sheffield United because they haven't been particularly goal heavy this season. So actually, interestingly enough, Sheffield United are the only team to have scored fewer goals than Palace so far this season. Pedro Neto being missing from the Wolves team may damage their attacking output. We still have to talk about Edouard, Ayew and Hwang Hee-chan because they have been doing well. Hwang's been in good goal scoring form. He's got a good price as well. But it's more likely that these two teams could be sources of defensive investment simply because Sheffield United and Burnley are the bottom two for expected goals so far this season. So Sam Johnston, Mark Gay are in contention, but also Joachim Anderson as well. He's a bit more expensive now. If you had him since the start of the season and you had him from 4.5 million, then you're doing well. But he's 5 million now. So if there's money to spare, Anderson is definitely worth a shout because, of course, he can get involved in attacking returns, does really well for bonus as well. But if you just need someone to just rotate in, keep a clean sheet, maybe rotate him out for some of Palace's harder games, come back in, then, of course, Johnston and Gay are worth doing that with because 4.5 million. Now, at the same time, we've got 4.5 million defensive options at Wolves as well. Again, that means they're rotatable. In and out of Wolves is nice and not so nice fixtures. Craig Dawson is probably our favourite, not just because of the defensive potential, but he has famously been very, very good from set pieces. I remember his glory days as a West Brom defender. He was in my team for many months when he was in that vein of goal scoring form for the Baggies, and he still has that threat now. And of course, Sheffield United, they are the worst team for defending set pieces in the division this season. They've conceded a league high 54 shots from set plays. Now, they've also been very weak defending down their left-hand side, and so lots of right-backs have had a lot of joy against Sheffield United so far this season. Newcastle game being, case in point, really. Trippier got some good assists from open play. Nelson Semedo, sort of a similar type of player, slightly more of a wing-back, but certainly can cross the ball into the box. So if you want something that's a little bit less centre-back-like and you want yourself a nice wing-back, then maybe Semedo is going to help you out for this one. And the great thing is, the way that Wolves have been priced this season is you could get yourself one of those wing-backs and you don't have to pay any extra. Semedo being 4.5 million, same price as Dawson. A couple of other names in the bargain basement at the moment. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is in form again. And of course, going up against Brighton, this actually is a good fixture for attacking players because they still haven't kept a clean sheet so far this season. So he's very much in contention. As is Matoma and Adingra, because Everton's defence hasn't been great across the course of the season. It has improved of late, so I'm a little bit worried about Matoma going into this one in my team. But yeah, Brighton certainly know how to score goals. They may be able to punch through Everton's recent defensive improvements. And of course, do keep an eye on the fitness of Pervis Estupiñán, because if he is declared fit for this game, his attacking threat is always incredible, and so he's got a chance of maybe making the scout picks if he's fit. So do keep an eye on De Zerbi's next press conference. You'll be able to find all that information on Fantasy Football Scout, and of course on Friday afternoon, you'll get the team news with Joe and Neil. They'll have the latest on Estupiñán and what you should do with him in your team. A couple of other fixtures to talk about. Forest against Aston Villa. That's a bit of an intriguing game because There is a lot of investment in Villa right now for good reason. They've scored lots of goals, but they have had quite a lot of games at Villa Park. They're actually not quite so attacking away from home. So this is why Villa are very much in contention for representation in the scout picks this week, rather than necessarily being automatic go-tos. Because, away from home hasn't been quite the same level of goal threat. So 6 goals in the last 5 away matches, which isn't bad, but it's certainly not the attacking heights we've seen them put on in front of the whole end, for example. They have had some trickier tests away from home, so maybe there's a lot of fixture-related difficulty to be read into that stat. Forest have conceded actually at home to all 3 newly promoted teams at home so far this season. So Watkins and Diaby, by all means, don't sell them for this week, of course. Not what we're suggesting, but perhaps maybe temper your expectations for this one, just because we do see Villa not quite hit the heights that we're used to at home when they're away from home. So it's enough for them to be in contention, and we'll see how they fare towards the back end of the week. We've also got Son Heung-min in contention as well, and the reason, again, it's contention here rather than straight in, because he's got good form. The fixture's quite difficult. Going against Chelsea, as we've already mentioned, their defence is quite mean. I know they've just lost 2-0 to Brentford, but as I've said on a number of videos and podcasts this week, lots of sort of, situational reasons behind that second goal. Chelsea were very much on top in that game. Brentford just did a fantastic job of soaking up the pressure and just kind of being very clinical about, surgically getting behind Chelsea and getting the goals it needed, which is something Brentford have always been very good at. Thomas Frank loves being able to do that against the big teams. Again, Spurs v Chelsea could be quite a tight encounter. I think Chelsea need to not lose that. And when we've seen Spurs go up against teams trying to sit deep this season, it has been difficult. However, again, he's got to be in contention, Son, because he is the highest scoring player in all of FPL since he switched to being the striker in Gameweek 4. So Gameweeks 1, 2 and 3, we had Richarlison up front. Since Son's taken on that role, nobody scored more FPL points than him. So bearing in mind he scored against Arsenal or Liverpool, there's no reason why he can't do it in a big game. So he's got to be in contention as well. Now, we've got a couple of long shots as well. Now, there'll be people looking at the fixture list and thinking, Man United have a good fixture this week. You may even have some people out there who still have your Bruno Fernandes and Rashford since the start of the season. Entirely probable, because every week it feels like there's a reason to keep them and then they just don't deliver. Their fixtures longer term are not bad. They've been on my radar for a long time. I've been kind of having Fernandes on my watch list for ages and just waiting for an ample opportunity to sign him. It hasn't really arisen because their form hasn't been good enough. But we do just have to mention them here because it is a game against Fulham. And so, their stock has fallen, of course, but their attack has been a little bit anemic. And so the editorial team have actually gone out and said in public that there is a higher chance that Bernd Leno gets in the scout picks than anyone from the Man United attack. So I guess that tells you all you need to know. And of course, just to finish off, just to clarify again, Arsenal and Newcastle are doing very well, but they do face each other this weekend. And this fixture in the past hasn't really been much of a goal fest since Eddie Howe took over. Both meetings between the two sides last season were quite tight. Arsenal mostly on top in those. And so, it's very difficult to throw them into the bus team for this week. So that's all the players. Appreciate there's a lot going on there. I mean, effectively, this section of the video is really just players you want to have on your watch list and have on your radar. We now move on to the actual bus team itself, which, just to clarify, could change by Friday because we'll, of course, have those press conferences, which will tell us more information about who's fit, which could perhaps maybe remove some players from contention if they're the ones not fit. Maybe if there's a couple of players missing from a team that maybe makes their attack not as exciting or their defence not as secure, then maybe it could shift things. But this is the 11 so far in the substitution. So for the benefit of the podcast listeners, I'll of course read it all the way through. So they've got Johnston in goal with Leno on the bench. We've got Stones, Dawson and Shimikas as the back three, and Mbeumo, Salah, Son and Hwang Hee-chan as a four-man midfield, with Alvarez, Nunez and Haaland as the front three, which is certainly a powerful looking front three, that's for sure. Then we've got Pinnock and Taylor on the bench, largely cost related there, to be honest. We haven't really talked about those two guys really, but Taylor's in a lot of teams because he's 3.9. Pinnock as well, of course, getting an attacking return against Chelsea, can always pop up with a goal. And Cole Palmer sits on the bench as well. He's probably going to be a regular inclusion in the Scout Picks bench team for the next few weeks because just purely because of his price. He's an excellent price. He can be a fifth midfielder if you wildcard now. And when Chelsea's fixtures get really nice from game week 16, you're going to start him a lot more often. And he's actually not doing too bad a job of getting some attacking returns even through these difficult fixtures. So he's very much going to sit there. Now, we don't know who the captain's going to be yet. You're going to have to wait a few days for that one. A lot of people are mulling that decision over. We've analysed it on a couple of videos. So the General's talked about it with Joe. Joe's also talked about it with Tom. Those three guys have got some incredible finishes between them. So go and check out what they've got to say. We also doing a lot of shorts videos right now. So if you've not checked out our shorts, then go and have a look at those. Scott's done one on the captaincy this week, with also a look at possible Nunez captain as well, because he's in very, very good form. But yes, if you want to find out who the captain is of this team, then do tune into the website on Friday. And of course, you need your membership as well. So another reason to sign up, because you'll be able to have a full breakdown of why the editorial team have picked one captain over the other. So hopefully that is useful for you. And hopefully this video was useful. Hopefully this has helped you guys realise just how well your team is prepared for this weekend. You might be looking at this thinking, I've got enough players. You might be thinking, I don't have enough players from that particular one, and I might have to either take a red arrow on the chin and press forward into game week 12, or maybe make a couple of changes to best leverage some of these really nice fixtures for this game week. So do let us know in the comments how many players from this team you've got and how many players you intend to have by the deadline. Perhaps you haven't made your transfers yet. And yeah, just keep us posted. Drop the comments in. If you've got any questions, I'll jump in and answer them if you have any dilemmas for your transfers. But with that, I shall leave you fine, folks, to enjoy the rest of your preparation for game week 11, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.